think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this policy pop-up webinar organized by the Professional Development and Enrichment Subcommittee of the Professional and Administrative Senate. My name is Ellie McCann. I'm a senator on the P&A Senate representing Extension. We are grateful to see so many people attending today's event. And on behalf of all of us here at P&A Senate, we appreciate and value your engagement in our programming. Our session today is titled Navigating the Road to Digital Accessibility with Title II at the University of Minnesota. Whether you are new to the concept of accessibility in digital media or have some experience with it, this afternoon, you'll learn more about Title II, the federal government's rules on accessibility for websites and mobile applications, and how to make content generally more accessible to not just those with disabilities. The Office for Digital Accessibility, the ODA, is a system-wide entity designated to provide resources and services to the University of Minnesota community in support of the creation, development, and procurement of accessible electronic content and services. So a quick word about how today's webinar will work. Our presenters have prepared some material to help us dive in and further understand Title II and the core accessibility skills that everyone should know. After presenting that material, we will open up the rest of the session to Q&A, and I encourage you to all use the Q&A feature of the Zoom to post questions for the presenters. Please do not use chat for this. If you have any technical questions, we have Jessica Velguth here from the P&A committee to help, so please message Jessica directly. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available to all registrants via email when it is ready, as well as on the P&A website and on our YouTube channel. However, it sometimes takes a few weeks for that recording to be available. We have to caption it, and that can take some time. In the meantime, we appreciate your patience. So with all of that out of the way, I will hand things off to our ODA presenters to introduce themselves and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Khaled Musa. I'm the director of the Office for Digital Accessibility.
Hi, my name is Luke Kludershoff. I'm the Senior Digital Accessibility Analyst at the ODA.
There, I'm DM Lavoie. I'm an academic technologist on ODA and also academic technology support services.
We're excited to join you today to talk about the new accessibility requirement for the university. We have slides. They were put in the chat for you. They're at z.umn.edu/pde-a11y-slides. The A11y is a short way of writing the word accessibility because there's 11 letters between the A and the Y. Our agenda today is we'll talk about the new Department of Justice Title II clarification. We'll talk about the university's response. We'll talk about our ODA 3R framework for accessibility. And we'll talk about the 7 core skills of accessibility and give you examples and resources that will help you in doing your daily work to create accessible material from the start. We'll start with the Department of Justice, which Title II clarification, which was titled Non-Discrimination on the Basis of Disability. That's the new title of it. For some of you, you might wonder a little bit what is new about the new Title II and why are we calling it clarification? So Title II is part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Americans with Disabilities Act was established and then was a law that was passed in the 1990s. And it's been amended in 2008, but for all these years, there is a big confusion about does it apply to only physical buildings, ramps, doors, elevators, that kind of stuff, or does it also apply to digital front doors, ramps, and elevators that we're sharing via websites, documents, and that stuff? There were a lot of lawsuits that happened during that period of confusion, and the new clarification clarified all of that and made it very clear that Title II does apply to digital content. On the screen now we have an image of silhouettes of people that represent the way we think about accessibility at the University of Minnesota. Accessibility is for everyone, whether they have a disability or not. We are thinking about it proactively to make sure everyone is able to participate equally. The general guideline is that everyone should be able to access the information equally with whether they have a disability or not, and participate in our activities, engage in our programs and services, irrelevant if they have a disability or not, and we should be proactive about it. So this silhouette of people is to signify that our work or the work that you do with digital accessibility impacts real people at the university. When it comes to accessible content, it is essential for people with disabilities, but beneficial for all. Our information is digital and it's everywhere. And whether we are doing teaching, learning, research, outreach, or just do any activities, development, trainings, just everything is digital. Therefore, we have to make sure it's accessible. And accessibility hasn't been prioritized. So to make it accessible now is going to seem overwhelming, and we understand that. It's going to be a huge lift to think about all the digital content that we've worked on, from websites or Canvas courses, documents, emails. All of that stuff it does apply, and because it does, it's going to be a huge change, and change is not easy. Change of mindset is not easy, but we're hoping that this session today will give you clear resources on things you can do to help with your work. And know that we're here to help you, and we are here with you. Now we'll get to the Department of Justice Title II clarification, and you'll hear us say compliance with this rule has never been optional. It's always been required, but now it made it much clearer that the requirement is there, and it was passed in 2024 in April. And because it hasn't been a priority for a lot of institutions, public institutions like the University of Minnesota, the Department of Justice does understand that people need time to catch up to this stuff. So they've given everyone either a 2-year period or a 3-year period, based on the size of the institution and the resources that the institution has. Our institution fits under the 2-year period, so we have until April 2026 to be compliant. And it adopts the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA. This is important to mention, but not important for you to remember more than what I just said. That it's the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. It's been a recognized guideline worldwide, and the fact that it adopted it, it has 50 success criteria, but we'll break it down for you later in the presentation with 7 core accessibility skills that you need to remember. The way we do work at the university is from with digital content is very, very large. So what's impacted by this is everything that we use for teaching from our LMS, Learning Management System, Canvas, pages, assignments, discussions, announcement, or document formats, Word, Google Doc, PDFs, the websites and everything that you put on a website, videos, text, color, notes from publishers, third-party tools that we engage with, external programs that are essential for us to do our activities or business as a university, like Zoom, Kaltura, Google Sites, websites, documents. This is all part of this rule. There are exceptions that are been or exemptions that have been planned. There are 5 of them. 3 have to do with documents. The first archive exemption is for archival content, specifically for libraries. In each of those, there are subsets of rules that must be satisfied. It's all or nothing to gain that exception or exemption from the Title II. So the second Word document is pre-existing documents that have been research papers that were posted on our website prior to April 2024, or newsletters that do not advertise or ask people to participate in current activities of the university. Those previous documents you do not need to make accessible, but new documents after that date must be accessible. Individualized password protected documents is also another exemption. Social media, all social media posts, we do not need to make those accessible. Third-party tools that we are using that we do not have control over, that we do not have a business relationship with, also we do not need to make it accessible. But that third-party exemption fails if we have a contract or we sign or agree with that business to use it in our activities. So that's really important, and it's very hard to satisfy that rule if we are using this tool to conduct university business. We would love to frame this work for you a little bit more, because accessibility to do this work satisfactory, or for us to kind of mature our work when it comes to accessibility and do it effectively, we would love to kind of learn from what security and privacy has done in the future and what Title IX has done in the future, learn from those examples. But there are a lot of similarities that we can equate. Accessibility is the same as security and privacy and discrimination and harassment rules. The work never ends. We always have to be vigilant. We always have to think about it and try to do the work as we're doing our daily work. Try to practice those things and make them habits that are good in from the beginning, or practiced from the beginning. So try when you're clicking on links, you try not to click on phishing links, right? So you don't compromise that your information or any of the data that the university has entrusted you with. The same thing when we're doing our daily business, we try not to discriminate or harass anyone. This is not an option, and we are always vigilant about it. It does happen, and we always go back to remediate and investigate and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. The same thing with accessibility. Try to do it accessible from the beginning. If mistakes happen, no problem. We'll investigate. We'll work with you on it and try to remediate so it doesn't happen in the future. You have to remember, this is a cultural mindset shift for us as a university, trying to prioritize this work. So prioritizing it starting today, one little bit at a time, is going to be very helpful, and is going to carry a long way, because the more you practice it, the more it becomes part of your routine. We try to equate accessibility to spell check. You never publish anything if it's not spell checked. We want you to think about accessibility the same way. The other way to think about it is if you haven't spell checked anything in the last 10 years, how would you start now? We want you to start small, start now. The university has done a lot of work towards accessibility in the last 10 years, even more. We've had an accessibility policy, believe it or not, since 2002. The university was one of the first few universities, actually the second in the nation, to put an accessibility policy to tell people who do business on behalf of the university to create content accessibly. And again, it hasn't been prioritized, but we've had a policy since 2002. We thought about it since 2002. We've had an ambassador group for the last 10 years. We created a digital accessibility badging training since 2019. So we've had a lot of initiatives, training initiatives, grassroots initiatives that have kind of grew organically at the university. When this rule came out, the Office of Information Technology and the Office for Equity and Diversity came together and said, we're gonna try to centralize all these initiatives under one roof and help with creating the Office for Digital Accessibility that would be responsible for the policy and the strategic plan that accompanies that policy to help people, to help support people, to help departments, colleges, system campuses prioritize this work, to help you understand the requirement. So we've updated our policy that we've had and we've clarified a lot of things that were not clear before to make sure that the requirement is clearly spelled out now. We have the policy and it has 3 procedures: reporting and monitoring, procurement, and exemptions. So we did the policy to make sure it matches the new Title II clarification. There is a Z link, z.umn.edu/A11Y policy. It just went through a huge revision, a major rewrite, and it just finished a couple of weeks ago, the 30-day comment period. We're revising it now. That Z-Link does not work because the policy is down until we publish the final version with the new comments that were added as a result of this major rewrite and the comment period. The accompanying strategic plan has 5 parts, the intro plus 4 other parts about establishing a central unit, coordination, and communication and a few other steps. If you'd like to read that, that is already published on our website at z.umn.edu/A11Y-plan. It's a lot of information, and we've already executed on a lot of those plans in the strategic plan, and we're excited that the university is responding well to all of it. There are a lot of partners at the university. In order for an initiative like this to succeed, we needed to build a lot of partners with different offices, the different system campuses. So it's really important that we think of this as a collaboration between the Office for Digital Accessibility in every unit. We can set a high-level strategic plan, but when it comes to the actual work, the actual plan and execution, each college, each system campus, each unit approach is different, and each person approach is different because this is a people challenge, a cultural challenge. We want to make sure we are here for you. And we've made a lot of partners with the provost office, Office of Information Technology, the libraries, OED, the chancellors of the system campuses, the vice chancellors, the deans, the associate deans, the undergraduate studies, the graduate studies, and all of the different research units across the institution. And there are things that are easy to do, but other challenges, but every partner is willing to work with us. And if you would like to become a partner, in this work, like the PNA Senate Committee invited us here. We're happy to come to your department unit to talk to the team and understand your work processes and answer specific questions regarding your work. But as a university-wide, we've established two committees, the Academic Digital Accessibility Liaison Committee, ADELS, and the Web and Email Digital Accessibility Committee, a coordinator committee. Those two different committees are in charge of or helping the ODA execute on our policy and strategic plan, one in the academic sphere with monitoring, reporting, education, training, and support for their local units. And each dean appointed a liaison or multiple for their college or system campus. The same thing on the web and email side, similar responsibilities, but for web and mass email. We're not talking about emails on one-on-one emails. We're talking mass emails with Salesforce and MailChimp emails. Those are the two ones that we think have the biggest accessibility initiatives when it comes to emails. Web, it's Drupal and Google Sites. Every other platform, if you're using one, we'd love to make sure you talk to your coordinator to see if you are. So we know a lot of people are using WordPress, but there are plans to move it to Drupal because Drupal does offer a lot more accessibility, and there's a Fullwell theme to make it more accessible. There is an accountability piece here that we want to make sure accountability goes both ways. The ODA is accountable for the policy. The ADELs and the WEDACs are responsible for their units, but we want everyone to be responsible and accountable for their own work. We're approaching this work not from a consequences approach, but rather from a support, education, and outreach initiative, making sure everybody knows the Title II clarification, the new requirement, the new timeline, and know that you have resources to use. Our 7 core skills on our website, our DA badging, digital accessibility badging series, courses, our accessibility ambassadors training. There's a lot of different resources that the university has done, and we did not do it overnight. We've been doing, as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing this for a long time. So we want you to take advantage of everything and start to build your skills. The agents representing the university and doing business on behalf of the universities are faculty, instructors, and staff. Students, we encourage students to do this work, but we're not monitoring or reporting on student work. So we would love for students to learn these accessibility requirements, but they're not as per the Title II clarification or our university policy. They're not part of that requirement. They're not representing the university. There are a few things that we're working on. Some of it we are going to show you later today with our flow charts. We are working on Accessible Byte series, short recordings, short educational recordings about accessibility topics. We've identified a few gaps like audio description on videos or Google Docs slides and sheets not having an accessibility checker, but one has been purchased for the university and will be available as an accessibility suite for all Google Docs, sheets, and slides in the future. And with that, Luke will take the next part.
Thank you, Khaled. So now that we've talked about the Title II requirements, we wanted to share a strategy for meeting these requirements within this time frame. And we're suggesting the 3R strategy is a flexible model for guiding this accessibility work. And the 3 R's are remove, review or revise, and write first. It's important to note that this 3R process is iterative. It's a really flexible model. And accessibility is never a one and done. It's something that you need to go back to. So for example, the removing unused content, you might need to return to that every now and then, and same with kind of revising and making sure that everything is up to date and accurate. But eventually we want to move everyone into write first, kind of doing accessibility right first from the start. We recommend breaking up this work into smaller chunks like sprints or semesters or quarters and aiming for full accessibility by April 2026. Breaking this work up could mean focusing on one R at a time, or focusing on fixing specific issues, for example, heading issues first and moving on to color contrast, etc. Or maybe focusing on the most visited web pages first and then kind of going from there to the ones that are less visited. And each division or department may need an individualized strategy, and Adele's and the WEDACs that Khaled mentioned are working on the strategies for individual departments, and the ODA is also available to help with strategizing and making sure that this work is kind of broken up and doable within this time frame. We're focusing on the remove strategy first to set the foundation for this work. The stage involves taking an inventory of your digital content, like documents or websites or courses, and determining what content should stay up and what content is outdated or out of use and can be taken down. And this frees up resources to focus on fixing only the content that is necessary, so you don't need to waste a lot of time fixing content that no one is using anyways. And content that isn't in active use can be deleted, unpublished, or archived. The second stage is that we'll be focusing on is review and revise, and this involves taking stock of all the content you've decided you want to keep. And then for any content that has accessibility issues, you can replace it with more accessible versions. For example, you can get a more accessible version of a document from a publisher or another institution, or convert a document into a web page. We really recommend using web pages and HTML whenever possible, as opposed to documents, because it's a lot generally just more accessible and easier to make and keep accessible. And if it does have to stay in the same format and you can't find a more accessible version, then you can use the 7 core skills that we'll be talking about later in this presentation and the other accessibility resources that we're sharing to revise and correct any accessibility issues. And the final R is doing it right first, which saves a lot of time and effort going forward. We like to think of accessibility the same way we think of spell check, and use accessibility checkers early and often as you create digital content. If you haven't spell checked any of your work for several years, it might be a large lift at first to spell check everything and make sure that everything's correct. Similarly with accessibility, if you haven't been thinking about it, then it's a big lift at first. But then if you, as you work it into your existing workflows, it becomes a lot easier to manage kind of as you're working on things, as opposed to leaving everything until the end. And there are tools available for websites and for courses to do accessibility checks. For websites, we have PopeTech and Editorially. For courses, we also have UDoIt and the RCE checker. For documents, you can use Adobe Accessibility Checker for PDFs and Microsoft Accessibility Checker for Microsoft documents. And for Google Docs and Slides, Crackle Docs has an accessibility checker that will be available soon, as Khaled mentioned. As I mentioned, you can use editorially like spell check when you're working on a Drupal page. It's only available in Drupal. So one of these two views on the left will appear at the bottom right of a page if you're logged in as an editor to Drupal. Either this red button with the number of issues detected or the blue panel with the issues and a heading outline and alt text. And that allows you to kind of quickly see what all the identified issues are, as well as a heading outline structure to make sure the headings are structured correctly and all of the alt text in one place for all of the images. And PopeTech can be used on university websites regardless of the platform, and we recommend using it for full periodic scans at a cadence that works best for your team and needs. This is an example of a report that PopeTech can generate on a Google site. If you don't have access to PopeTech, you can also install the free Wave, that's W-A-V-E, Chrome, Firefox, or Edge extension to get the same information. It's using the same engine. You would just need to run it on each page. And that shows you kind of all of the errors. In this case, this page doesn't have any errors, but it does have 2 contrast issues that need to be fixed, and then 6 alerts that you can manually check for to make sure that everything's correct. Crackle Docs is a tool for checking Google Suite documents that will be available soon and enabled by default for everyone. It's an extension that's built into the Google Suite. And this is a photo of how it appears. Once you run the extension, it'll give you kind of the sidebar with, and it walks you through all of the issues, the things that are correct and the things that are flagged and need attention. And the Microsoft Office programs, like Word and PowerPoint, also have an accessibility checker built in. It can be accessed by going to the Review tab and then clicking Check Accessibility, and it'll generate a similar report to Crackle Docs. We have a few flowcharts that we've made to help guide decision making around alt text and around documents. So this is our chart for deciding when to use alt text and what the alt text should describe. So for example, if the image has text in it, then you need to make sure that the text in the image is included in the alt text. If the image is purely decorative, then you can use an empty alt tag. Yeah, this just kind of guides you through the different options available, and different types of images require different kinds of alt text. And you can take a look at the slides for more details kind of as you're working on images. This is our flowchart for documents, and the main message here is to really, if at all possible, if it can be a web page or a Canvas page, then use the web or page or a Canvas page instead of a document. That's going to be a lot more accessible for a lot more people, and it's a lot easier for you. It takes a lot less time to make a web page or a Canvas page accessible as opposed to a document. If that's not possible, if it does need to be a document, then we recommend prefer to use word processing tools like Word Docs, Google Slides, PowerPoint, Google Sheets, Excel, as opposed to PDFs. Again, those are just going to be a lot easier to make accessible, especially with Crackle Docs now available soon. It'll kind of quickly guide you through ways to make it more accessible. PDFs just take a lot more efforts to maintain and keep accessible. We don't recommend them unless it's absolutely crucial for it to be a PDF. And then we have a similar flowchart for forms. And again, the message here is pretty similar. If it can be a web form, then make it a web form. If it requires multiple steps and things like signatures, you can use TDX or Jado. If it's a simpler web form, you can use Google Forms or Qualtrics or Jado. Yeah, PDF form as kind of a last resort there. And we have a few action items to help get you started. First, you can learn about the 7 core skills that we'll be presenting later on today, and we have a link to the 7 core skills on our website as well. You can sign up for a short digital foundations course in our digital accessibility badging program. And then once you've taken that, we also have a number of other courses on different topics like various types of documents, Canvas courses, websites, a lot of different areas that you might be working in. Use the accessibility checkers that I went over when you're working on documents and websites and courses. And you can learn more about how to use Crackle Docs for your Google Suite documents at the Focus on Files virtual event on March 18th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. And I have a link in the slides to the registered for this event as well. And now I'll pass it over to DM to talk about the 7 core skills.
Okay, so we have our 7 core skills of accessibility that can be helpful for making your digital documents or websites accessible. And these are things to keep in mind, not just for just web content, but any digital content that you put out there, whether it's course content, marketing content, or training or documentation, anything like that. So the 7 core skills of accessibility are alternative text for images, color contrast, headings, descriptive links, bulleted lists, properly formatted tables, and video and audio with captioning and audio descriptions. I'm going to give a brief overview of these skills, but we also have all of this information on our website under the 7 core skills of accessibility. The first is alternative text for images. This is important because anyone who is using assistive technologies, such as a screen reader, who may not be able to see the image visually, this provides a description of what is being represented in the image. So in this example on the right, the alternative text is Maria Genie interacts with a small humanoid robot, both facing slightly to the side in an environment suggesting a workshop or laboratory setting. The person appears delighted and intrigued by the robot. So this provides a description that someone can understand if they cannot visually see the image. We also sometimes define this as if you were describing the image over the phone or in a podcast. There's no need to include image of or picture of in the alternative text because how a screen reader encounters the image, it will say image, and then it will read the alternative text. So it's already identified as an image. Adding alt text also helps improve SEO for your site when it's crawled by search engines, and also for any AI tools that might be encountering it as well. It's just helpful for it to understand what's going on in the image. There's a really great AI generator, AI alt text generator out there that Arizona State put out that's free to use. It does a wonderful job at describing images, especially any complex images like charts or infographics. And we have a link to that in the slides. The next skill is color contrast. So this is providing enough contrast between text and background colors. This helps users with low vision or color blindness be able to understand the content without having to sorry, my cat just needed to jump in front of me. This helps users with low vision or color blindness be able to read the content that's presented to them. So on the right, there's a couple examples from Instagram for the university. So one is Goldie Gopher, it's a Valentine, but there is low contrast on the heart because the text is black on a like maroon background. So it's really difficult to read and the color contrast is too low. The one next to that, however, has yellow gold text with a black outline, and that's a lot easier to read. And one other thing to keep in mind too is this is helpful for folks who may be in low light situations or have glare from light, either from sun or overhead lighting, or if you're using focus or night mode on your phone, when it turns everything to grayscale, this helps make things still be legible for folks as well. And text must meet the 4.5:1 contrast ratio to meet AA standards. There's several tools out there for checking color contrast that are free extensions for Google Chrome, or there is also one that you can download for Windows or Mac. And we have links to those within the slides as well. So for linked text, you want to use concise, meaningful text that provides information when the linked text is viewed out of context. The reason why this is many screen reader users, when they are looking through a website, they either navigate by headings or look through a links list. And a links list just takes a list of all of the links on the page and thus puts it within the order that they appear on the page. So if there's a bunch that say click here or read more, it's really difficult to understand where you're going without the context around it. And also if there's many click here or read more, it's difficult to know which one is the right link that you're looking for. You also don't want to use full URLs as link text. You don't want to link a full sentence or like a whole paragraph, for instance, because that's a lot of text to include in a link. And if a link opens in a new window or goes to a file type, so for example, a PDF, include this info in the link text. If a PDF is a good example because oftentimes if you activate that link, it's going to either prompt a download or it's going to open in the browser's PDF viewer. So that is a change of context and can be a little bit jarring if you don't know that that link is a PDF when you're activating it. So it's good to just include PDF like in parentheses in the link text, so people know that's what will happen. Next is using lists. So very much like this presentation, we use lists to help break up the content, make it a little easier to read, and also if there's anything that's instructions, so things that you need to do in order, like a recipe or driving directions, it's helpful to have those broken down in numerical steps. So on the right here, we have an example that has some driving directions, 1, 2, 3, 4. But within 3, we also have some sub-bullets for points of interest there. So since those are not directions necessarily, they're just kind of highlights for that area. Those don't use numbered bullets. And you want to make sure that you use the bullet formatting provided in text editors. You don't want to use dashes or asterisks or emojis in place of bullet formatting because that won't keep that as a list view when assistive technologies encounter it. Headings are also used by screen reader users to navigate through the content. So much like you would read a newspaper, heading 1 is usually the title of the page or the publication. And then you have heading 2, heading 3, so on and so forth. This is to provide semantic order to provide an outline of the content. You don't want to use headings for styling purposes. You can apply styles to headings, but as long as they are maintaining the correct semantic order, that is what you're looking for. And so you want to use the headings within text editors. Just applying bold in a larger font size does not provide the heading tag on there. So make sure you use the headings that are provided within the rich text editor, within Canvas, for example, or within Google Docs or Word. Tables should not be used for layout purposes. They should only be used to display data. So you want to make sure that you have a row or column header defined for your cell content. So when a screen reader user navigates through each cell, they know what the data is relating to and the scope of that table. You don't want to leave any table cells empty. You want to have not available or none, or just something there to represent that there isn't any data collected, because it can be confusing if there's a lot of blank cells and you're like, did something load wrong or something missing? So it's better to write something there if data is not available. And you also want to provide contextual information to help users understand the data that's presented by either providing a table caption or summary to define what this table is actually about. Color contrast is also important for tables as well. As many times you'll see things like this, where this example where the row every other row is colored a different background color. So you want to make sure that the color contrast also works for tables so that people can still read the content. Video and audio is a much larger topic. We're only going to touch on a few things here for this, but video and audio content must include text-based alternatives so all users can access the information. So for video content, this means we have to include edited captions for dialogue and sound, that these captions are edited for grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and audio descriptions are available for on-screen actions. So on the top right here, the example shows a University of Minnesota video where the captions have been added and they're edited for grammar and spelling. So you can see that there's commas, there's periods, things are capitalized properly. That's an easy way to tell if something has most likely been edited for content in the captions. Auto captions do not provide enough because oftentimes they have mistakes, the grammar is missing, and it's not enough for satisfying this guideline. For audio, if you have anything that's podcasts or interviews or things like that, you want to make sure that there's a transcription. So again, if someone is deaf or hard of hearing, they won't be able to access that content at all unless there's an alternative for that. And it's also nice for transcripts too for audio content because this makes it a lot easier to cite within papers. It makes it a lot easier to search this content later on if you're like, we're trying to remember, oh, I remember this interview and they said this, but you can't remember the episode or the timestamp. It's just really helpful for providing additional context for that content. We also have several links available within the slides as well for creating transcripts for this content. We know this is a lot to take in and a lot to cover, but if you're ever stuck, you can always get in touch with us. We have a consultation form on our website, z.umn.edu/oda-consult. We also have office hours, and you are just in luck because tomorrow is our first Thursday of the month when we have our office hours. We just ask you to register in advance, just that we have enough staffing to cover the office hours and also understand a little bit about what questions you might have in advance. We also have a large list of resources available within the slides as well. One thing I would highly recommend to folks is to check out our Digital Accessibility Foundations courses and Digital Accessibility Badging program that's available within the Training Hub. These are free self-paced courses for creating accessible presentations, creating accessible web content, creating accessible Canvas content, many of the things that we covered, and also has a lot more information and resources too. So again, that's free to access through the Training Hub, and you can register at any time. We have some links to some other tools here for Pope Tech and Editorially that were mentioned earlier, and also improving accessibility within Word and Google Docs. Before we move on to questions and answers, we want to hear from you. So we created a chime-in that's at chimeinto.cla.umn.edu. The code is 676961. We also have this QR code if you have a mobile device handy and want to scan that to go directly to the chime-in. This just asks us, or we'll ask you a few questions about where you are with your accessibility journey, and some of the concerns that you have. This is just helpful for us to know where people are at, and also for us to think about any future trainings or materials that we can put out there to help make this easier for you. So definitely check that out. I will leave that up here for a few more moments and we can put that URL in the chat. But yeah, I think we're ready for questions and answers while people are answering this. Jessica, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm Jessica, and I will be handling the Q&A section today. We've got a lot of great questions. And so I think what we're going to do is try to get some of the more general questions, and some of the niche ones we can send to our presenters to answer offline. And we are currently making a document with all of the questions and answers that we'll share as soon as we have it completed. So one question that's pretty general is, even though pre-existing conventional electronic documents are an exception, is it still an exception if courses are using those year after year?
That's when the exemption fails, is because you're actively using it. So it doesn't work.
Okay.
So you must make it accessible because you are actively using it in courses.
Because you're continuing to use it. Okay. So what about documents that are intended to be printed, but they might be shared electronically, say on a Google site, as a PDF, or in Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that? So they're intended to be printed but shared digitally.
The Web Content Accessibility Guideline allows for an equal alternative format on that same page that you're linking that print. As long as the information in that PDF is available on that web page, you satisfy the rule.
Okay, so now we have a question about archival digitization projects. So there's one person who asked about scanned PDFs that are put online into a digital repository. So if they're archival things that are posted online, do they need to adhere to the new guidelines?
That is so specific. We encourage you to reach out to the ODA for a consult, because archive means different things to different people, and we want to understand more about that archival. We cannot determine archival exemption here in this case without knowing all the specifics, because the archive in the rule is specific to libraries, and libraries are working on an archival procedure with consultation from many stakeholders in that group, and it's not a decision that we take lightly.
Okay, thank you. So how does this fit in with Peak now that many colleges have communications staff who have moved to Central? So is the university giving units and colleges funding to support staff to take on this additional work?
Peak has this as one of their priorities. So university relation as part of Peak is helping a lot of units, system campuses and departments make their websites accessible. at the time they hand it over to you, you must maintain that accessibility after. With emails, it's a different question. So a lot of people have different resources. I would urge you to check with your college unit representative coordinator, web and email coordinator on some of that work. But the coordinators are aware of it. University Relation is aware of it. Peak is aware of it. And all these university partners are working in tandem about this. Now, the question about resources and financial, that is something specific to you and your department that ODA does not comment on, because there's you would need to figure that out, at least what that means for your team going forward. We're happy to support you in understanding what responsibility or what lays at the heart of that responsibility, when you're ready to do the work and how to do it.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question from someone who manages a research project that posts online documentation, including PDFs of survey questionnaires and census forms in lots of different languages, dating back to starting from the 1960s forward. So to comply, this is another question about archived historical documents. So it sounds like that's probably a similar answer to the previous question about archival documents.
I think so. It's hard to determine that from the question itself. It requires a longer conversation, I think.
Okay. So for some of these more nuanced questions, they would staff need to reach out directly to your team or consult through the resources on the website.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that we have the answer on the archival, right? Like there's another committee working on that archival piece, so we're happy to connect. If we don't have the answer, we're happy to make connections. So I know OGC is playing a role on that in some of those determinations. So we have to make sure we consult the right entities at the university that can help us make that decision.
Will there be any kind of notification sent out broadly when the Google Docs accessibility checker is available for UMD?
It will be available for all 5 system campuses, all staff, all faculty, all instructors, and it's been paid for. It passed OGC review, it passed security review. It's just we're developing the documentation, and yes, an email will go to everyone saying it's available. We're targeting the date of March 18th. Luke mentioned the focus on Drive session on March 18th. So we're hoping that you'll receive that notification on or before that date.
Okay, so there's a lot of there's a question about software and the new purchasing process and guidelines around purchasing software, including extensions, and making sure there's now the OGC approval and accessibility requirements. So are there extensions or online tools that are already approved and fully vetted that we can move forward without all of those additional required approvals?
The approved tools that you can use. So software is a very tricky word here. And we're assuming you're talking about web extensions, Chrome extensions, Firefox extension that can help you check the accessibility of your documents, websites. So we have approved tools for Canvas, the rich content editor accessibility checker. You do it. For websites, it's Wave, Axe, Site Improve extensions. Highly recommend them. Pope Tech is the centrally available tool that would crawl the entire site and editorially on a page-by-page checker. Grackle Doc will be for Google Docs, slides and sheets, Microsoft Accessibility Checker for Microsoft Word documents, PowerPoints and slides. I mentioned a whole lot, so I'm not sure which one you're specifically asking about. But yeah, you can use any one of those that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I think it was just a general question about what tools are already vetted that wouldn't need to go through the whole approval process. I think we have time for a couple more. So one is around linking to external U of M resources, such as transit providers, safety resources. So are we able to provide external resources if they have not gone through a full accessibility quality check? Or is the university liable for sites that we might, external sites that we might link out to that don't follow the rules?
That is a very good question, and it's something that the Title II clarification has spent almost 30 pages on. It's not as straightforward because there are different ways that you're using those resources. But I can assure you, if you're linking to government entities or other public institutions, you do not have to verify the accessibility because they will comply the same way we are complying. If we are the same thing, if they're linking to our websites and our resources, we have to comply. Therefore, again, public institutions, government entities are working on it, and they will make it accessible because there is a timeline for that. But if you're linking to a private business, there's no guarantee, no assurances. It depends, in my opinion, on if this is required for someone to engage in whatever activity you're doing, whether it's teaching, research, or outreach, then are you really doing the right thing here by providing something that you have not checked? If it's optional resources, and if all you require material is accessible and the other it's an optional resource, I would tend to say you can post it. Our goal is not to prevent you from doing stuff. Our goal is to help you continue to do what you're doing in the most accessible way.
All right, thank you. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Again, we will try to get answers to the questions we weren't able to get to out to everyone, and we'll share those when we have them finished. And I'm going to turn it back to Ellie to wrap us up.
Thanks, Jessica. So with that, we're going to conclude today's webinar. On behalf of the P&A Senate, Khaled, Luke, and DM, we want to thank you for speaking to all of us today on such a vital topic, so relevant to the work we're all doing at the U. I think you did well to highlight the opportunities inherent to the U's new policy, and I'm sure our discussion today was both interesting and informative for everyone in the audience, especially based on all the follow-up questions. You all did a great job answering those in the Q&A for us as well. Before we finish up, I would like to encourage everyone to consider serving on the P&A Senate. If you value programming like today's webinar, it takes the participation and encouragement of people like you to make them happen. Plus, every voice matters. If you are interested in learning more about Senate governance, please go to the University Senate website at www.usenate.umn.edu. Thanks so much. And Alex just put our next event later in March on intergenerational relationships within the workforce. Thank you all.